Welcome to the latest episode of the Federal's Worldly Wise, where we attempt to go beyond superficialities to figure out what is actually happening in international politics. The world is on autopilot. There is none in the cockpit to steady the turbulence. The United Nations, and in particular the Security Council, is virtually paralyzed. The five-nation powerful body mandated to navigate the world through the various crises is fighting its own battle. On one side is ranged the United States, France, and the United Kingdom. On the other side are Russia and China. The conflict is practically direct. In the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, it is not Ukraine alone that Russia is fighting. The US, UK, and France are aiding, arming, and funding Ukraine. Since the war began, the US has sent $175 billion to Ukraine to help in its war effort. Of this, $130 billion have been sent directly to the government of Ukraine, while the remaining 50 has been spent indirectly. According to the US-based Council on Foreign Relations, the rest is spent on activities associated with the war. The British have spent $18 billion on Ukraine, of which $13 billion is for direct military support, according to official figures. The French have spent nearly $10 billion on Ukraine, directly, indirectly, and various other ways. As for Russia, it is China that is providing much needed support. Though officially Beijing has not acknowledged its role, there is enough evidence to show that China is behind Russia. The bipartisan US based Atlantic Council, quoting media reports, claims that Beijing is accused of helping Russia in important ways through the provision of restricted items, including sanctioned components and dual use technologies used in the production of missiles, tanks, and aircraft. By providing the vast majority of these exports to Russia, US officials believe that China has helped Russia greatly boost its arsenal and ramp up military production, says that Atlantic Council report. This means the Security Council, which is meant to safeguard peace around the world, is at war within. That being the case, how can it fulfill its obligation to be the world's protector and supervise peace? Take the case of Israel's assault on Gaza for the last 19 months. In reaction to the October 7, 2023 guerrilla attack by the Hamas group that took 250 people hostage and killed around 1,200 people, Israel went on an overdrive targeting Gaza. Not satisfied at having killed close to an estimated 60,000 Palestinians, including a large number of civilians, in the relentless assault, Israel has been blocking much needed humanitarian aid for the beleaguered population in Gaza. Reports and visuals show people, including of starving children, clamoring for the little amount of food, almost leading to food riots. On the outskirts of Gaza are long lines of trucks with food and other essentials waiting to be let in. The UN has been unable to use its clout to force its humanitarian aid into the territory. Its humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, was quoted by the BBC as saying it was a war crime. In today's 21st century world, which claims to have grown beyond its cruel and primitive past, it is shocking to see a nation starving thousands, of whom many have died from hunger. The UN is just sitting by, unable to intervene. Take the Russia Ukraine war. It's been over 3 years since it started, on February 24th, 2022. The Security Council has done nothing substantial. It has been unable to take any initiative to provide the platform for negotiation between the two warring nations. Instead, it was the maverick US President Donald Trump who decided he was going to end the war and has attempted to talk to both parties. This has led to the ongoing talks hosted by Turkey between Russia and Ukraine. The UN is nowhere in sight. Even the recent India Pakistan conflict that lasted 3 days came to an end, but not by UN efforts. US President Donald Trump, again, has claimed he was behind the ceasefire. India has said that it independently worked out a ceasefire with Pakistan after Islamabad requested an end to fighting. Whatever the truth, the UN figures nowhere in this scenario. Amidst this, China has floated its own international organization for mediation. Will this replace the UN Security Council? Obviously not. Some 80 nations attended this inaugural in Hong Kong recently, of which only 33 formally joined the forum, according to a report in TheFederal. Clearly, the Xi Jinping government is using the vacuum created by the Security Council's virtual absence to emerge as a forum for peace along the lines of the UN Charter. At the moment, it does not look like this forum will make much headway, as China's dominance itself is under challenge from the US and its Western allies. It will get no recognition from anywhere except for parts of Southeast Asia, if at all. The crisis in the UN Security Council is a pointer to its systemic obsolescence. In 1945, when the UN was formed over the ashes of the earlier League of Nations, the five permanent members of the then newly formed UN Security Council were allies in the Second World War. Over the last 80 years, global equations have changed sharply beyond recognition, and geopolitical realities are no longer what they were then. The Cold War first polarized the US and the Soviet Union. Later, the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1990 further brought in changes worldwide. After the Soviet breakup, the US became the sole superpower. Now, the emergence of China threatens Washington's dominance. No surprise then that the Security Council is outdated and in tatters. For the last 3 decades, there have been a move to reform the Security Council to reflect new realities, including the rise of several nations around the world. Nations like South Africa and Brazil are demanding that they get a seat at the Security Council's high table, as the continents of Africa and Latin America are not represented at all. Similarly, other nations on various grounds have demanded that they be accommodated too, including India and Japan. There is merit in the demand for Security Council reforms, but they can be implemented only if the existing five permanent members clear it. And from all indications, it will never happen. So the reforms have remained on paper. Changes, if at all, can come only from the outside. If a majority of the remaining 188 nations decides to challenge the UN Security Council setup by declaring no confidence in it or something to that effect, there may be some effect. But this is easier said than done, as most nations are controlled in part or full by one or the other big five in the Security Council. In other words, the world is stuck by the inability of the referee to function, let alone freely. So you have conflicts going on with no end in sight, simmering tensions among specific nations that tend to go out of hand periodically, and outright conflicts that have the potential to threaten the existence of the world as we know it. If, for example, any nation at war, like Russia, decides to go for the nuclear option, the consequences are simply too horrifying even to contemplate. During the period of the Cold War, though the Soviet Union and the US were in the Security Council affecting its efficacy, the very fact that the two matched each other cancelled any potential adventurism by the other. The balance between the two superpowers proved to be a deterrence to both, and the situation generally did not go out of hand. But now that is not the case. The US continues to dominate with no real power to counter it. China is attempting to fill the space, but it still hasn't got there. For example, it has not been able to change the narrative in Gaza or intervene to find a solution to the Russia Ukraine war. Without meaning to sound alarmist, the fact is that today there is nothing to prevent wars from breaking out, nothing to prevent humanitarian disasters like what we are witnessing in Gaza, and none to provide direction even on issues like climate change. Unfortunate state of affairs, but that's the sad reality. We, as ordinary citizens of this world, can only keep our fingers crossed and hope the situation doesn't get worse. Thank you.